views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
And hello, everyone. Welcome to Open, the one and only show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world right to you. I'm your host, Daren, Jaime, and today we're going to update you on what's happening in and around our borough as well as across New York City. Coming up on today's show, we go front and center with several things. First off, we'll discuss how one not-for-profit is providing food for healthcare workers from nearby restaurants. And then also, we'll learn what assistance a community-based not-for-profit organization is providing to those who are most vulnerable to COVID-19. Plus, we'll talk about a film investigating HIV/AIDS crisis and how we can contribute to positive social change right here in our very own backyard. And then a little bit later on in the show, we're going to discuss Bronx Community College's adult education and workforce training programs for students of all ages and backgrounds from across the Bronx and beyond. We're going to give you some details a little bit later on in the show. And then finally, with many chefs out of work due to the coronavirus, we're going to learn how some chefs are putting their time towards the Black Lives Matter movement. So we encourage you to stay tuned because all this and much more is heading your way. Right now, we're officially open. And hello, everyone. I am Daren Jaime, and today is Wednesday, July the 15th. And yes, you're watching Open, a show that brings the Bronx and New York City straight to you. We also want to welcome our viewers on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, as Open is also being broadcast live simultaneously on MNN's channels. And you can also stay connected to us via social media on BronxNet TV on all of our platforms. We want to tell you a lot of good things have been happening throughout the course of the past week. We're going to take you through a few of them with our Bronx updates. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio has announced that New York City public school children will spend 1 to 3 days per week in a classroom, and also the rest of the time learning from home. This when they return to school in September. Schools Chancellor Richard Carranza and Mayor gave families a first look at what the children's schedule could actually look like when kids return to school with new social distancing guidelines brought on by the coronavirus pandemic. The plan will have to bring in half or a third of students in classrooms at a time, depending on how much space is available in the school building, and have kids who are at home each day continue with distance learning. Now, mandatory masks will be required for children and staff, nightly deep cleanings, and also hand washing stations, as well as using outdoor spaces like cafeteria and gyms and auditoriums for social distancing will also be a part of the plan. And in other news, tenants as well as organizers rallied at Bronx County Housing Court to protest and call for eviction courts to remain closed all the way throughout 2020. Our BronxNet reporter Sanji Lopez was on the scene, and she brings us a story right now.
No rent. No money. No rent.
Bronx community members, advocates, and coalition members of the Right to Counsel NYC Coalition and Housing Justice for All gathered in front of the Bronx Housing Court on Grand Concourse for an eviction defense rally demanding that housing courts remain closed and advocating for government to place people over profits and an eviction-free NYC through 2020.
We're here demanding that they keep the courts closed. We want to make sure that tenants have an opportunity to weather this storm, and that the government protects them and bails them out the same in the way they protect and bail out corporations. We are paying our taxes, they use our taxes to help the wealthy. They need to use our taxes to help us when we need help.
Due to the pandemic, I lost my job, and because I haven't paid rent for 3 months, they're already sending me to court. It's not fair that due to the pandemic, we have to be on the street.
The Bronx Housing Court is the busiest court in the 5 boroughs. Tenants and organizers here fear that in the next coming weeks, not only will this court be inundated with new eviction cases, but also COVID-19 cases.
My coworkers have lost clients, our neighbors, to COVID-19.
Mis colegas han perdido clientes que son nuestros vecinos por causa de la pandemia.
The elderly have been left to die during this pandemic.
Los inquilinos mayores se los ha dejado a morir durante la pandemia.
The courts are fully aware of the deadly impact that reopening will have on our people, and I refuse to be complicit.
Las cortes saben el grave dolor que causará reabrir y aún así lo hacen.
It'll be dangerous for New York to have people moving around to have to come to court. It'll also be very dangerous if people are actually evicted, because then they're going to be homeless. There's nowhere to use the bathroom or sleep or take a drink of water if you're homeless. If you go to a shelter, there's no social distancing. It's going to be dangerous for tenants and dangerous for all New Yorkers.
The universal eviction moratorium protecting anyone from being evicted has been extended until August 7th. However, courts remain partially open, allowing landlords to file new eviction cases. The rally ended with this skit depicting what housing courts will look like once reopened during and post-COVID-19.
And so it goes. One tenant after another being dragged into housing court for essentially being poor. Everybody knows that while wages have remained stagnant, rents have doubled and tripled.
For future tenant actions, petitions, and information, follow at Housing Justice for All and Right to Counsel NYC on Instagram. Reporting for BronxNet, Sanji Lopez.
And thank you, Sanji. And in other news, Uptown Vinyl Supreme has a special announcement they're making coming out on July the 19th. Let's take a very special look at that.
What's up, y'all? I go by Sunny Chiba, part of Uptown Vinyl Supreme.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
And we have been invited by Summer Stage to take over their IG on Sunday, July 19th from 2 to 4 p.m. for their new series, People Speak Sundays. And we were invited because we were supposed to perform for them August 1st of this year, but with everything that's been going on, they've been figuring out other ways to get to the people. So if you tune in, and if you would like to, you can use the hashtag People Speak Sunday for a chance to be chosen to be featured on our live takeover. So share your art, share your voice, share your poetry, and let's keep this conversation going.
And that's all the time we have for our Bronx updates. We encourage you to stay connected to us. Guess what? We got a whole lot more open, some great things happening. Stay with us. We'll be right back right after this.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scales of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to the new reality.
Reporting from Frontline. And welcome back. Frontline Foods takes food from restaurants and gets it actually to frontline workers in the community, this particular during the COVID-19 crisis. And recently, also, they have now become a part of World Central Kitchen. Joining us now to share a little bit about that is Joel Wishkovksy, and he is also the chapter leader. And Joel, good to have you.
Hi, nice to have you. Nice to be here, Daren.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. And when we talk about the great work that you're doing, obviously, I mentioned during COVID-19, you guys spent a lot of time getting that food out there from the restaurants all the way out to the frontline workers. And that was major because when you talk about need. Frontline workers really were in need. Share with us a little bit about that whole exchange and how that came about.
Yeah, so Frontline Foods is really a grassroots organization, and we take action during crisis, and we're leveraging the power of local food ecosystems, local restaurants, local farms to get food to crisis workers and impacted communities. So really what we're doing is we're coordinating safe delivery of meals prepared by these local restaurants. So we're putting money back into the local food ecosystem, and while also supporting the people who are on the front lines.
And when we talk about supporting people on the front lines, talk to us about how much buy-in was it in terms of local restaurants saying, listen, we'll do this, because, some restaurants were just struggling for survival during a time such as this. But yet still they were saying, hey, this is important.
Well, when we first started, actually, the genesis of the idea for me came from my girlfriend's experience in the hospitality industry. Mm-hmm. She worked with restaurants all over the city, all over the world, and they were starting to go out of business. And we were like, okay, we need to figure out some way to support them. And we started just sending food to local hospitals, COVID units in Harlem, in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, across the entire city. And our friends started like, oh, that's great. I want to donate meals too. Started raising money. Within 24 hours, we had raised $50,000.
Wow.
Like that.
Yeah.
And we met people all over the country who were thinking about the same thing. We're trying to do the same thing in their community, and we banded together. That was 3.5 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, that combined organization has raised $10 million across the United States. We operate in more than 50 local chapters. And in New York alone, we've raised and spent $1.2 million at local restaurants. And if you think about what that sort of means for both kinds of groups, on one end, you have the money. Obviously, COVID-19 has economic impact on a lot of restaurants, people who work at restaurants, the communities. They may be undocumented or may not have the same social sort of safety net as other communities who are now out of work. So that money went directly back in the pockets of these local restaurants who were buying food from local farms, or buying services from people who were fixing their grills, and delivery people, bartenders, waitresses, et cetera, et cetera. And then the other side of it, we really started as an organization to feed these COVID units, nurses and doctors who are at these hospitals. But over time, it's actually sort of morphed into these sort of communities across the city that are having sort of our outsized impact from COVID-19.
Mm-hmm. And so as you continue your work, you became a chapter leader, and talk to us about becoming that. You started small, and obviously it's grown to be a major organization. Talk to us about your, did it surprise you at all that you would be able to just have this kind of growth over this short amount of time?
Yeah, so my day job, I work in technology startups, and I founded and invest in those kinds of companies. So for me, this kind of speed of organizational development is not new, but I have never seen anything like this. We came up with this idea like middle of March. I think our first delivery was like March 16th. And by April, there were dozens of chapters across the United States. We had raised millions of dollars already. So the speed of which this sort of thing came together, I think is a result of two things. One, how unprecedented the situation is, and how the community, especially in New York, wanted to come together to be helpful. And then two, the kinds of people that we were sort of bringing together were like, there's no freaking time to waste. We're not sitting around asking for permission to send food to hospitals. We're not asking permission to raise money. We're not asking permission to do whatever. People will join, especially like in New York. They're like, hey, I want to send emails to do fundraising. Great, write the emails. They're like, well, what should I write? I'm like, you tell me what to write. Like, we don't have time for this traditional sort of top-down, I tell you what to do kind of thing.
Right.
This is an all hands on deck. And interesting, I think you've probably seen it in your own life, COVID-19 and the fact that it was such a big, such a like drastic, such a scary thing all at once. People weren't futzing around with permission. They weren't futzing around with all the sort of BS. Oh, it's Saturday morning. I need to get information. No, I pick up the phone and I call.
Right.
So you had this like period of time where people really wanted to act. They didn't really want to just ask.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, in my other line of work, I tell people stop asking for permission, which you have the authority to do, right?
Totally.
So if you have the authority to do it, you go ahead and do it, and you went ahead and did it, and now it's actually gone across the world, and now people are really being helped and blessed all across the United States. Talk to us about.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, the last part of your question was interesting. You had asked about this, being a chapter lead.
Mm-hmm.
And when we came up with this idea, we didn't know. I mean, how am I going to help a community outside of New York? Like, I'm a New Yorker. I don't know other communities. I'm not connected to restaurants. I'm not connected to donors. So the thing that we did that I think was really unique, we enabled other people in other communities to do this. We're a grassroots organization, and from the beginning, we're like, how do we give the toolkit to other people? Are you in Charlotte? Are you in Chicago? Are you in Las Vegas? Are you in a more rural community? You in New Haven, Connecticut? You see what we're doing? Interested in it? We had people all over the country be like, oh, how do I do this? I want to do this. This is so amazing. How do I donate? How do I do this? I'm like, literally, here's the playbook. Here's how you do this. Here is the step-by-step guide. And oh, by the way, like, let me know. I'll just help you. You tell me what you need. I'll tell you how we did it, and we can share information. And people across the country didn't need permission. They just started doing it themselves. It's pretty amazing.
So for people who want to get connected, before we go, talk about how people can get connected, particularly restaurants who may be in our area who say, listen, you know what, this sounds good. I want to get connected.
Yeah, I think the thing that we need the most right now, obviously, things in New York have died down. On the hospital side, obviously, death rate is going down a little bit. The number of new cases is going down, which is amazing.
Right.
But now you have the thing that I think people in New York really understand and feel, which is the economic impact, which is going to last weeks, months, potentially years. And there are a lot of communities out there that are hurting economically really badly. There's a lot of food insecure communities all across the city that need food. So we've transitioned from sending food to hospitals to now sending them to sort of communities, to NYCHA, to parts of the city, city housing. We work with a group called Life Camp. It's a gun violence organization to identify individuals and communities and groups that have food insecurity, particularly because of COVID-19, and helping them to get food. So we need money. We need support. We need to identify those kinds of communities. So I think for your listeners, there's sort of two things we're looking for. One, if you know of communities that need food insecure, that could use our help, we'd love to hear from you. We're at frontlinefoods.org/New York. Also, if you have money or your company or your organization has grants, we need money to keep doing the thing that we're doing. Meals cost between $10 and $20 per meal. And each one of those goes to support a restaurant and the ecosystem. So money and groups that need food.
All righty. Joe Wishkovksy, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for the great work that you're doing and helping New Yorkers out. Keep it up, and took a little something and went a long way. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for your time, Daren.
All righty. Listen, we're taking a quick break here on Open. Stay with us. We still have more show. We'll be right back. Coming up right after this.
When taking public transportation, don't touch your phone. Carry hand sanitizer and use it immediately upon leaving the bus or train. Avoid touching your face. If someone is coughing or sneezing, move away. Wash your hands with soap and water as soon as possible. Limit contact with poles. If possible, avoid rush hour. Don't eat or drink on public transportation. Keep your bag off the floor or other surfaces. Avoid directly touching turnstiles. Stay up to date with the latest from your local health department and CDC.
And welcome back. Invisible Hands is a community-based, not-for-profit organization that delivers groceries, prescriptions, and other necessities to those who are most vulnerable, to those who've been affected by COVID-19, which includes the elderly, the disabled, as also the immunocompromised. The organization also continues to connect vetted and trained volunteers with their recipients, following the CDC guidelines in order to keep their community safe, also while social distancing. And joining us now to share a little bit more about the organization and the great work that they do is now, and give us further insight, as co-founder of Invisible Hands, Simone Policano, and Policano, I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Simone Policano. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's so great to talk to you. No one can ever pronounce my last name, so you are good.
Listen, I want to make sure I got it right. I blow things from time to time, but that is important for me. Good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So listen, when we talk about Invisible Hands, obviously, as we said, COVID-19 affects a lot of different people, but you guys are really in there bridging the gap and getting in between some of the most vulnerable during this time. So talk about some of the great work that you're doing here.
It's been such a rewarding experience. I mean, this all started, about almost 4 months ago now, almost to the day, where, I was just walking home from from the subway to my apartment in Queens, and I saw, my local supermarket. This was like the middle of March. So, we weren't on like full lockdown quarantine times yet, but it was starting to not look so great. And I was walking by my local Key Foods, and there were just a ton of elderly folk coming in and out. And I remember thinking, like, this doesn't feel safe. I wish there was some way that, like, I could offer to just go in and do their shopping so, they could stay outside the store. And I went home and I just posted on my Facebook, and I was like, hey, does anybody know of a way that a young, healthy person could volunteer to bring groceries to the elderly or the immunocompromised right now? And a bunch of my friends reached out and basically said, I don't know of an organization or something that's doing this, but I would love to help if you find something. And then an old friend of mine, Liam, called me. He saw the status and he basically reached out and was like, wait, I love this. Let's why don't we do something? Why don't we be the people to make this? And we kind of put our heads together and we launched Invisible Hands. And, in the past almost 4 months, I think the way that New York has responded to the crisis has really changed and grown. An infrastructure that didn't exist a few months ago now does exist. And it's been amazing to be a part of the story of how New Yorkers really came together to support each other during this time. So it has definitely been a wild ride.
Yeah. So give us a little bit more about how the program works for somebody who may not be so familiar.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to our website, invisiblehandsdeliver.org, and you can put in, if you need groceries or need prescriptions or anything to be picked up for you, you can put in a request through our delivery request form, and we will match you with a volunteer in your neighborhood, and you'll get a call from them directly. And from then on, it's all sort of you talk to your volunteer directly, and you coordinate the delivery, the delivery time, and kind of what stores you need them to go to, and you kind of work all of the logistics out with them, and then they go do your shopping and bring it right to your door and leave it at your doorstep. So it's contactless. We try to obviously mitigate the spread of COVID as much as is physically possible. All our volunteers wear masks and gloves and have been practicing social distancing. So it's really a way to keep the most at risk right now inside and protected, and having healthier folk who are less at risk out doing the dirty work. We also have a call center that you can call if you're not so tech savvy, and if you want to sign up to volunteer, you can also do so on our website.
Yeah. So when we talk about some of the great work that you're doing about volunteer, I mean, it takes volunteers to make it happen. So what's required of a volunteer, and how can they get involved?
Absolutely. So again, invisiblehandsdeliver.org is our website where all of our information lives, and you can sign up to volunteer on the website. We have raised over 10,000 volunteers, which is such an amazing sort of miraculous thing. And I think, something that people may not think about is that it takes around 3 volunteers to make a delivery happen. You have the call center volunteer who answers the phone. You have the volunteer working on our matching team, matching recipients with volunteers. And then you have the delivery runner who's out on the streets doing, the grocery shopping. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, if you have some, free time now because everything's kind of on pause, and you want to do some deliveries in your neighborhood, you just sign up on our website and you'll join our Slack workspace. We work on Slack, and you just join your neighborhood channels, and then delivery requests come in and you claim them as your free. So it's only when you're free. Like, it's not like you sign up and then you have to do a certain number of deliveries. You can sign up and do 1 or 2 or 20, and that's great. And you can also volunteer remotely, work from home to kind of help us run our back end operations with like our call center and our matching service. So yeah, we've got this whole team going on, and it's really fun, and it's a great way to be involved in your community right now, and spend the summer helping your neighbors.
Well, when we talk about the work that you've done, over $1 million in food, medicine, and other necessities have been given out across New York City, Long Island, as well as Westchester, New York, and Philadelphia, and New Jersey, I should say. And so talk to us a little bit about this situation right here, more particularly here in New York. There is a hunger crisis, and we're talking about that today on the show as well. The hunger crisis in New York. What are you finding between people with those calls for hunger, and what are you hearing with boots on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, New York's hunger crisis is astronomical, and COVID has only made it worse. 1 in 4 New Yorkers is food insecure and is unable to, afford their own groceries. And so you have a food insecurity problem, and now you have a food accessibility problem, because people who maybe even can afford their own groceries, it's now not safe for them to go outside. So initially, we started sort of focusing on the piece of, we just want to keep people at home, and so let us go out and buy your groceries, but people still paid for their own groceries. And as the crisis has sort of shifted, we've also been very intentional about wanting to have a program that also tackles food insecurity, so those who can't afford their own groceries. Because as services like Fresh Direct and Instacart and Amazon food delivery services come back online, because when we first started, those were totally overrun, people who can't afford their own groceries will still never be able to use services like that. So we've been partnering with food pantries and mutual aid organizations that are able to cover the costs of their constituents' groceries. So we've been coordinating a lot of food pantry pickups and drop-offs. We work with the New York Common Pantry every week, which has some drop-offs in the South Bronx. And so we are making sure that we're also targeting the food insecure population, because obviously the economic devastation of COVID is, arguably almost as bad as the disease itself.
Yeah. And as we see things start to slowly reopen, New York City starts to get its grips back. What are your plans, and how do you plan on still working this thing out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're trying to respond to this thing in real time as it's changing. We're seeing New York. Today is the first day with, knock on wood, fingers crossed. Actually, yesterday was the first day with no new COVID deaths in New York City, which is amazing. But so, other places in the country aren't looking so amazing right now. So we are, talking to some folks in other cities who might want to start up an Invisible Hands chapter in their city that needs a little bit more help right now. But in terms of New York, we're really focusing and prioritizing this food insecurity piece, because again, as everything opens up, as I said, people who aren't able to afford their own groceries are still not going to be able to have access to food, and it's part of just such a larger New York hunger and poverty crisis. So as we are partnering with food pantries and mutual aid organizations, that is kind of where I think the bread and butter of what Invisible Hands is going to be. I mean, we're 4 months old, so we're still figuring it out, but that is, I think long term, even as COVID passes on and passes through, that is never going to be that is the constant problem that's going to need help. And there is a lot of food in New York, and there's a lot of people that need food. And then there is this problem of getting that food to those people. And that's where we found we have the manpower and are able to help provide services to sort of connect people to the food that they need. So that is what we are going to, keep doing as long as we can.
Yeah. Well, Simone, before we get out of here, please do me a favor and tell people how they can get connected to you.
Yes, absolutely. So all of our stuff is on invisiblehandsdeliver.org. You can find us on Instagram at invisiblehandsdeliver, and everything that you could need to know about us is on our website. So please come check it out. If we can help bring some food to you, if you want to sign up to volunteer, all the information is on the website, and we would love to have you as part of the Invisible Hands family.
All righty, Simone Policano, we got to leave it there. Thank you so much for the great work that you're doing in helping not just New York, New Jersey, you got Westchester, you got Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. Oh man, thanks so much for the great work you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me.
All righty, Simone Policano, our guest here on Open. We want you to stay with us. We do have more show. We'll come right back right after this.
With coronavirus spreading, people at higher risk must take extra precautions. You're at higher risk if you're over 65 or if you have an underlying medical condition. Please visit coronavirus.gov for more information.
And thank you for staying with us. A Social Cure is a feature documentary that's actually exploring the HIV/AIDS crisis in South Africa. It doesn't just do that, but it also talks about the potential of a new networking technologies that affects positive social change and exploring the most recent innovations towards moving in an HIV-free future. Joining us now to share a little bit more about it is the author, the director, the writer, the producer of A Social Cure, Meissa Hampton. And Meissa, good to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Good. And so when we talk about the HIV and AIDS crisis, of course, many of us right now are still enamored and dealing with COVID-19 and still trying to navigate that. Somewhere lost in the process sometimes is HIV and AIDS, but yet and still for you, very prevalent, and you want to make your voice known.
I did. It is, it remains to this day one of the deadliest pandemics in our modern history. And in recent decades even, attention has turned away from it. And this is right at a moment when we are actually on the brink of being able to realize a future free from HIV. And it is a moment where realizing that future requires our interest and our communal participation as a global community. So I do think that we should be refocusing our attention there a little bit.
Yeah. And so when we talk about refocusing attention, a lot of things come with HIV and AIDS. One is awareness. Two is definitely cultural recognition as to what's going on. But in your documentary, talk to us a little bit about stigma, because I know you talk about stigma as well.
I do. It's my belief and sort of the premise for the film that the barrier between us and a future free from HIV is stigma. We now have the medical technology available to prevent future transmissions. If we can just diagnose those of us that have been exposed to HIV, if we can diagnose and get us on treatment, we can no longer transmit the disease. Anyone with HIV the disease stops with them. But we have to make testing available and prevalent and embed that sort of into the social fabric of our day-to-day medical care. So, you know, I believe that that it's stigma that prevents us from availing ourselves of the medical technology that's available. ARV medication is now readily available in most countries in the world, but we don't go to the clinic to get ourselves tested, to avail ourselves of the health care. And I believe this is because of the residual stigma that's attached to HIV that's preventing us from approaching it as just another health condition, like diabetes or heart disease or any other.
Walk us through a little bit about South Africa, because this is exactly where the documentary centers on the HIV and AIDS crisis in South Africa. As you're out there filming and you've got boots on the ground, what is your experience and what are you finding out?
Well, for the film, we travel to South Africa basically because South Africa remains the epicenter of the global HIV pandemic. In South Africa, infection rates hover around 19% of the adult population. This is worse in the townships of South Africa. As we see with most medical issues, certainly with epidemics and pandemics, the marginalized populations are disproportionately affected. This is affected by race, by gender, and certainly by class, by income level. And so in the townships, adult infection rates hovered around 30%. This is higher if you're female at around 42%. So about 1 in 3 people has HIV in these townships. So this is very much a part of their daily life and a part of their reality. So we traveled to South Africa to look at how communities there are dealing with the virus and share that experience so that we can look at it more globally and maybe take it upon ourselves and our own communities to be a little more proactive at home.
Any similarities between what you see in South Africa and here at home?
Absolutely. The transmission modes are very much the same. Globally, HIV is predominantly a heterosexual disease. That's a general misconception, though in the US, it does still disproportionately affect minority populations, homosexual populations. Also in the South, it disproportionately affects African-American women, which is very much a parallel to the burden that people of African descent bear in the global pandemic. So there's much in the way of transmission. I mean, in these cases, there's a misunderstanding. Most HIV many cases of HIV are transmitted through monogamous relationships. This is when we stop using protection, and HIV transmission rates are higher, for example. So there's a lot of misconceptions that lead to the pervasiveness of HIV that I think are very much paralleled, but also those facts that these marginalized populations are still disproportionately affected. This is very much a parallel, and it is the situation globally.
Meissa, Hampton captures a social cure dealing with HIV and AIDS, South Africa, bringing it all the way back to the United States, sharing with us some things about how social technology and social things of that nature can actually be a great blessing and bring about. Well, tell viewers how they could actually be able to see the film before I ask you the next question.
Yeah, the film is currently available on Amazon. If you have Amazon Prime, the film is free if you subscribe. So you just search A Social Cure. You should be able to find it and watch it there.
Yeah. And so you're talking in your film about social technologies and how social technologies can actually be the difference maker in the fight against HIV and AIDS. What did you learn, and what can you share?
Well, what we're seeing now with our new social networking technologies, which are not so new anymore, they were still really exploding when the film was first conceived. But we've always known that behaviors travel through communities, through social groups. They're contagious, so to speak, that we influence one another. What we're experiencing now with social networking technologies is that these behaviors, that information travels farther and faster than ever before. So we have a unique capability to reach our communities at a larger scale and with immediacy. And this is an extraordinary power, and it's right inside each of our own pockets. So we can use these the same phenomenon of social influence, but we can reach much further than we've ever been able to before at a much faster pace. So this is an extraordinary capability, and I'd like people to explore how they can do that, how to do it effectively, how we can go beyond the way we use our social media traditionally to actually affect ground level change in our communities with using these technologies that we use every single day.
Yeah, it's important. And so for people who watch the film and have an opportunity to view your documentary, the takeaway, what do you want people to take away who've had the experience of seeing a social cure?
I would like people to walk away from the film ideally feeling empowered. I've seen many, many documentaries that raise my awareness to an issue, but I leave the theater or leave my couch feeling a little disempowered. It's okay, now my awareness is raised to this issue. What can I do about it? Other than, send us a small donation to whatever organization. This film is ideally, it's meant to make you feel empowered, to give you the tools that you need to affect change in your own community, so that you walk away with a sense of empowerment and a sense of possibility as to what you can do and how you can affect change in your community and in your own life.
Well, Meissa, thank you so much for sharing a little bit with us here on Open. Certainly, people who want to have the opportunity to watch A Social Cure, as Meissa said, you can go right there to Amazon Prime and you can be able to check into that. Also, you can check out the website where you can get connected to A Social Cure. Meissa, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
All righty, we're taking a quick break. We do have more Open. We want you to stay with us. Open is coming right back right after this.
It looks bleak. It feels bleak. But the city isn't shut down because our public services keep working. In spite of, and in the face of, the dangers, we can count on them. And to keep them working and funded, now and in the future, we need to be counted. Self-respond now to the 2020 census at my2020census.gov.
And welcome back here to Open. Daren, Jaime here with you. And as we talk about students at Bronx Community College, obviously during a time such as this, learning and education is very important. I want to talk about workforce development and jobs, as well as the programs that are available for some students. Joining us to tell a little bit more about the work that is going on at Bronx Community College, we're pleased to be joined by Maddie Centeno, who is the Manager of Workforce Development and Continuing Ed at Bronx Community College. And then also Aisha Dean joins us. She's the program manager and also does senior training there as well. And welcome to both of you here on Open.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So for somebody who's not familiar with your program, please walk us through and share a little bit about the work that you guys do.
Okay. Well, let's put it this way. We do everything and anything to get folks from the community training to be employed. At Workforce Development, we have over 30 trainings right now that are available online for those that are interested in construction, education, computer training. There are various trainings that have certifications attached to them that would lead to employment. And part of the other pieces that we provide is career development, where we help individuals with their resume building, with interview skills. And one of our better trainings is the Child Development Associate Training, the CDA, which has been in place at BCC for about 8 years right now. But with Workforce, it's been in full effect for 2 years. And we have had over 2,000 students come through the door for that training. And I'm going to turn it to Aisha so she could say a little bit more about the CDA, because she's really the force behind it.
Take it away,
Aisha, can you jump in? Yeah.
Sure, I can. So the Child Development Associate is a national credential that is actually provided through the Professional Recognition, the Council for Professional Recognition. And it's phenomenal because it actually allows for people who want to work with young children the opportunity to go straight into a teacher assistant position. So it's a 120-hour training. It provides the opportunity to develop a portfolio, get childhood working with young children, get their experience working with young children, and then you can get the national credential. And it's not just national now, it's international. So once you acquire the CDA, you can go outside of the country and work with young children as well.
And so talk to me about participation. Who's eligible and how do they take part?
So all you need is a high school diploma and $150 in a photo ID.
That's simple, huh?
Well, to be honest, it's one of the most, it's the least expensive training throughout the city. The CDA has been offered at various colleges and have charged anywhere from $1,500 to $5,000 for this training. But at BCC, we're always committed to supporting the community. So we'd like to look at our trainings as quality training, but affordable. And so therefore, we're always thinking about, those who really would like to do this, but really can't afford to pay an expensive tuition fee. And because of that, that's why, I will say the floodgates have opened up and we've had a lot of students come in. We've had many students who are incumbent workers who are already assistant teachers, but need the CDA because it's mandated to be, to work in the classroom if you don't have a 2-year or 4-year degree. And we also have a lot of folks who are just thinking that this is the career they want. And so they're coming in, they're participating with us. We place them in internships with various partners throughout the city. And we help them find jobs. And we've had like about an 80% placement rate with our students. So it's very successful. I'm very proud of the work that Aisha has done, and our instructors, Katia, Pilar, and Jessica Robles, have been, phenomenal in helping these students. We really go out of our way. And that's just one of the examples of the training. We also have the Family Development Credential, which is called the FDC. That's issued out by the University of Connecticut. That's a credential that helps family workers and Head Start programs to be able to work with families as case managers. It's also something that's recently been mandated by Head Start for family workers to have. And again, we're providing that. We help the students come in, and that's a 90-hour training, but they come in, there's a portfolio that's a part of it. We help them put that together, and that's been successful as well.
Let me
Another of our
I want to
sorry.
just I'm sorry. I just want to jump in too while you have these programs. I want to jump in because I know a lot of people are being affected by COVID-19. And before the segment ends, I want to talk because there may be somebody who wants to take part in it. They may be somewhat, caught up with the whole COVID-19 thing. What can somebody do if they want to be a part of the program? And also give us a little bit about how COVID-19 has actually affected you guys as well.
Okay. Well, when this happened, our courses were already running, as an in-person classes. So when it came down to us having to transition to online, it was amazing how our instructors just stepped up to the bat and just converted what they were doing to an online platform. We had instructors using Zoom, Google Works. We, just working on emailing and getting anything they could to help these students get and transition to an online platform. That's what we did. For our students who this is something that was new for them, we offered them opportunities to walk them through the process. And if they didn't have a laptop, BCC was instrumental in getting laptops to students. So we did everything we could to help anyone who's interested in doing this be able to do this online. Can I say it's easy? It's not, because I really think folks have to become comfortable with learning online. It's not as easy as we think, I think, but the instructors really walk through the students. They give them ample time and flexibility to do the work, and we're there for them. If they have issues, they can contact us through email, and we can also walk them through any problems they have. So if they're interested in this and participating in online, they just need to go to the BCC website and look at the courses that they are interested in and register. If they have, again, issues, we have a team in place who can help them and walk them through anything that they need.
Maddie, Aisha, want to thank you so much for joining us here on Open. Thank you. We're going to make sure that we get our prospective students connected. And thank you for the great work that you guys are doing.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Can I just add one last piece in there?
Real quick, because I got to go to break.
Okay, break it. Hold on. Good. They can do the construction, electricity, plumbing, carpentry online through NCCER, which is the National Construction Center for Education and Research. I got that. How's that? They can get in there, they can get certified, and we can help them with building trades training. Okay. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Maddie, Aisha. Good to have you here on Open. Listen, we got to take a quick break. We do have more shows. Stay with us. Open will return coming up right after this.
Who's most at risk for coronavirus? People over 65, people with underlying medical conditions like heart disease, chronic lung disease, asthma, diabetes, people undergoing cancer treatment, and people with weakened immune systems. What should you do if you or a loved one is at higher risk? Avoid close contact with people, avoid crowds, stay home if you can, wash your hands frequently, learn more ways to protect yourself and others at coronavirus.gov.
And we are back here on Open. Daren, Jaime here with you, and we're so glad to have you sharing with us. As we've been talking about a lot of the things that have been going on throughout COVID-19 here in New York City, one is addressing the needs of many people in our community. One of those things is the food injustice and injustice in the community. We've got somebody here that's been on the front lines in terms of that, leading a team of chefs and actually distributing healthy, nutritious, I should say, enriched meals to the front lines of those who are on the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests. We're pleased to be joined by Rasheeda McCallum, who is the executive director of the Black Chef Movement. And Rasheeda, good to have you.
Hi, how are you? I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you too. And so as we talk about this, you made it your personal venture to say, listen, for those people on the front lines of Black Lives Matter, we're going to make sure that you're taken care of with some meals. Talk to us about what got you motivated in wanting to do this.
Well, I remember being home at the top of June. I was quarantining like most people were, and I was watching the news. And I said to myself one day, I was like, you know what? There's something I have to do. I have to help in a way that feels natural to me. So as a chef, that would be to provide people with food. So I decided just to give out food.
Mm-hmm. And so you say, okay, I'm a chef. I'm gonna give out food. But then, of course, the thought process goes from giving out food to where you're giving out food. And so, why did you make the decision in your mind to say, listen, okay, I'm gonna take it to the front lines?
Well, prior to the country's renewed unrest, I was already giving out food to frontline workers in hospitals. And so this was kind of my element of always helping people. And so for them, I thought, you know what? I want to make sure that these protests can go on for as long as possible. And I know that these protesters are going to be hungry because they're human. And so I said to myself, you know what? Maybe I can help prolong the protest by contributing food.
And so here you go. You say, I'm going to contribute some food, right? And talk to us about what you actually did and what you're actually able to distribute.
So I called a friend who's a chef, and I didn't tell her what I was going to do. I just asked her where I can go out to get a couple of things because I hadn't been outside in a while, so I wasn't sure if the prices had changed. And then prior to getting off the phone, she asked me, she said, hey, what do you need all this food for? Because she know at the time I wasn't cooking for any of my customers. And I said, I'm going to cook for the protesters. And immediately she said, wow, I want to help. So I thought to myself, you know what? If she may want to help, maybe there's other chefs who may want to help as well. So I continued to call all my old culinary school buddies, my old chef buddies that I used to work with, and everyone wanted to help. So together we all were able to contribute meals. And most of the time we are making meals that are easy to just grab and go. So we'll make like wraps, we'll make like little small salads. We have different beverages. We have granola bars. We have little power bars, muffins, things like that.
Emphasis on healthy, right?
Emphasis on healthy.
And so getting it out there, of course, and getting it distributed, how did you go about that in terms of getting it from the kitchen all the way out to the front line? Did you have people help deliver, or was it more of yourself? How'd it go?
Well, starting off, it was just myself and like 2 other chefs. And then I was like, you know what? This is really like a movement. So now we have transporters. We have people who will go to the supermarkets just to go grocery shopping and bring the groceries to chefs who cannot leave their house. We have people who will bring the cooked foods to the sites. So we have different cars. We have people who are using mopeds. We have bikes. We have people who are on feet. Whatever you are able to do, we will take the help, and we're just all working together.
Yeah. So you got people helping out, and so you've got chefs helping out. You've got people who are transporting stuff, but still, to this day, you're still doing the work. And talk to us about food donors and what possibly you can need right now.
Right now, of course, we need food donations. We are working to save up monies so that we can have our own site. A lot of the times we have big companies who are reaching out to us and restaurants to donate food. And unfortunately, we don't have enough space to store it because we're all at home. So we're saving collectively to have our own site and own location. And we have been fundraising actively just for that.
And so we talk about the great work that you're doing in terms of getting it out there to the front line. Talk about the response. What's it like for the people when they see this food actually hit the streets in the midst of what they're doing?
Wow, it's amazing. At first, we weren't sure if anyone was actually going to eat our food just because, we're in the middle of a pandemic. But all of the protesters have been so grateful. Everyone is eating our food. We have had people see us outside and go to the store and get more waters for us just so that we can stay out there longer and continue to nourish the movement. So it's been really, really great, and we're just very appreciative.
So when you talk about nourishing the movement, obviously it started off as a little something, a little dream, and then it expands, right? So What's that feeling for you to take this dream that you have, and all of a sudden now it expands out into becoming literally a movement all by itself?
I don't know. I just felt like I was chosen for this, to be honest. I felt like this is something I've been doing before, and now I've just been given the opportunity to really just take it to another level. It's a lot of work, but I'm grateful for all of the volunteers who has helped us in the background, because every day we have to send out emails, we have to put out phone calls to ask for food, and I can't do it by myself. So, again, it's a collective, and I'm just appreciative.
Yeah, it's a collective. So for people who want to donate food, obviously what can they go about doing in terms of connecting with you? Also, for people who say, listen, this sounds like a real movement I want to be a part of. Maybe I'm not the chef, right? Maybe I'm not that person, but I can do some transporting. What can they do?
You can follow us on Instagram at Black Chef Movement. Also, we have a GoFundMe and we have a Venmo. We're Black Chef Movement on all platforms. So just reach out to us. We have a position for everyone. So even if you can't cook, you can come out to the front lines and help us give out food. If you don't want to be outside, we need help organizing in the background. So there's so many different opportunities to join our team.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what you were doing before COVID-19 hit. Obviously, you were doing some chefing, and so talk about that.
So aside from being a chef, I'm also a nutritionist. And so through my company, I would cook food for individuals who did not know how to eat healthy, who may had want to lose weight, and we would deliver the meal to them twice a week. And so prior to this protest, I was delivering meals to frontline workers, nurses, MTA workers, really just trying to support the community.
And so for people who are out there on the front lines, obviously, you had a lot of interaction with them as well. Between those on the front lines and those persons that are out there on the protest field, give me a sense of what you felt just being a part of all of that.
I literally feel like I'm a part of history, literally, because what is happening right now to me isn't a coincidence. That, you know, there's a lot of people at home, everyone is being forced to pay attention, and, you know, I want to be able to tell my daughter one day, you know, this is what happened and this is what mommy did to help. So it really felt like, it feels great. It feels like I'm really making a difference.
And a part of history, as you say. But before we leave, once again, give us the opportunity to have people connect with you, how they go about doing it, and what do they do?
Follow us at Black Chef Movement. We're on Instagram. We're also on Facebook. You can send us an email at blackchefmovement@gmail.com. You can donate to us at GoFundMe/Black Chef Movement, or you can send us direct donations via Venmo and Cash App, at Black Chef Movement.
All righty. Rasheeda McCallum, thank you so much for being with us here on Open. Our guest, co-founder and executive director of Black Chef Movement. Thanks for the great work that you're doing and getting those protesters as well as those frontline workers taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Daren.
All righty. Rasheeda McCallum, our guest here on Open. And guess what? Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today's show. I want to thank you, the guests, for joining us, and also all of our viewers for tuning in. Now, if you missed any part of the show, you can always catch the recablecast at 5 and 8 p.m. here on Bronx. That's channel 67. If you have Verizon Files, that'll be channel 33, or anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. Of course, we want you to stay connected to us on Friday. My girl Rita Valentine will come back with another brand new episode of Open. Until then, Daren Jaime saying take care, God bless, and most of all, keep this channel wide open. Take care.